What's up, everybody? This video is from Voizzz. Looks like he's 4-tabling some NL25 on stars. That's his HUD stats there in the notepad. Guess it would help if I started the video. I definitely approve of his HUD and theme. It's a lot easier on my eyes than some of the other stuff I've seen so far. Here so far, this guy's folded the 3-bets over 140 hands, but I still don't like 3-betting him on 2s. The thing of it is, like, those hands have so little value in 3-bet pots. The times you do get called just because, obviously sets, aren't as valuable in situations where people are just stacking with, pairs anyway. I mean, that sounds weird to say, but it has more value when stacks are deeper and you can really cooler somebody, is what I mean by that. That's the trade-off. They miss a ton of flops, but when they do hit their big hands. So, with low SPRs, you kind of lose that value. Not that it can't be profitable to 3-bet that guy with any 2 cards anyway, but you can't just 3-bet every single one of his opens. So that's one of the hands I'm not going to do it with. Although I don't mind at all just folding in that situation from the small blind with this reggish looking guy behind you. But they're probably, like, if I have to pick a range to 3-bet with there, like, there are definitely lots of hands I can't call with that I would rather raise than with a pair of 2s. Some kind of suited connector or ace that's too weak to call with, something like that. Stats right go. Yeah, versus these guys, like on the lower right, we had King 6 on the button a minute ago. They're not having a ton of hands on these guys, 17 and 20. One of them is, 12-6, and the other's 30-30, but has folded all steel so far. King 6, I mean, it's kind of junky, but versus guys that are probably just folding to a ton of steals, is probably alright to open there. Here we flop trip aces. I like a big bet size because, I mean, you're only getting called there by aces, kings, and flush draws most of the time. I mean, if somebody's really bad, they might call with, queen jack, queen 10, whatever. But for the most part, like, they've either got something that they're not going to fold regardless, or they're folding regardless. I don't like that bet size. The turn card is kind of good, kind of bad. It counterfeits our kicker, but at the same time, the times, his flop range, King X is a huge part of his flop range, so I definitely don't like checking turn there. Like, even though he's got a high aggression factor, so, the times he has flush draws, or even maybe very once in a while he'll have queen jack or whatever that could bluff the river, like, it's way overshadowed by the value missed by some, the guy's 31-12. So he's not exactly going to have an easy time folding a king there, and you just lose a bunch of value by not bet turn, bet river in that spot. On table 1 with the king jack in middle position, I'm not sure why we folded there. Like, normally that'd be the bottom of just like, if everybody was unknown, I'd be raising king jack there. But you should be opening wider than that, if anything, because you've got 2 tight regulars behind you. You've got a 49-28 guy in a small blind, and you've got a super knit 8-6 in the big blind. So if anything, you should be opening hands like, you know, king 10 there, queen 10, queen jack. Like, you should be open anything that's halfway decent there, because it's such an ideal setup. You're going to be playing in position so much more than normal, and usually against a fish. You know, the big blind is just going to be dead money almost every time. That's like such an ideal position. You should really open up your range there. But king jack would be, you know, in my default range there anyway. There with the ace jack, pretty snap call, and you know, the guy with 10 blinds shoves in there. Here you got ace-king versus a guy, he's got a 42% steal so far. He looks a little fishy, 35-22. He only folds to c-bet, I think, what was that, 44% of the time. And he folds to c-bet so far 77% of the time. So on this board, you know, this board does hit some stuff, but, you know, I'd still c-bet it. I wouldn't make it huge. You know, I think that's probably a little big, maybe 250, 275 or something. But since up to this point he's folded to c-bet 77% of the time, you know, I'm definitely just checking the turn there. You know, because that card helps his range, so like it's just throwing money away to bet that turn. And he has something unexpected, like you wouldn't expect him to. I mean, you wouldn't expect him to, even when he's calling 44%. You know, Jack 4 suited is, you know, kind of like towards the bottom of his opening range anyway. So you wouldn't expect him to call 3-bet. You wouldn't expect him to call on the flop, but whatever. People do weird stuff all the time. Here we open ace-10 suited on the button, and we get 3-bet by guy. He's got 18.2% 3-bet. It's only played like 26 hands though, so that's like, what, 1 out of 6 or something. You know, that spot's actually kind of close, because the guy has real reggy stats. It's his second 3-bet already. I'm probably just folding. Like, that isn't enough information. You know, it's too easy just to, you know, run hot. You know, plus he might have ranges that are a little wide, but still the kind of ranges that smash ace-10 anyway. Like, he might just not like to call out of position, so he raises with hands like, you know, ace-jack, ace-queen, whatever, you know, stuff that dominates you anyway. So I don't mind that fold, but like if you had more hands on him and you knew he was really wide there, I wouldn't fold that jack-7. That's a very easy isolate versus a 27-11 guy from the cutoff in position. But what I was going to say is, with that ace-10, like if you had more hands on him and you knew he was out of line there, like that's the kind of hand that wouldn't be too bad to just call in position, because it plays good versus like random junk stuff. Like if you think he's the kind of guy that's just, you know, 3-betting you with ace-4 and little suited connectors and pairs and things like that. But I don't think you have enough information to do that just yet. So I like the fold. Obviously we're just jamming ace king on this, 40 blind stack that raises us blind versus blind. I don't really think it matters a whole lot what bet sizing you use there. It's not as if you can raise small and he's somehow going to think that he has fold equity and it's going to, he's getting in with anything he's probably 3-betting there with anyway. But even when he's not, I don't think it's hugely important what you make your raise size. And it's strange, the guy is 18-17 with only a 5% 3-bet, including that hand, but he did 3-bet fold with just 40 blinds, so it makes it close with eights because he has even less blinds now. He only started the hand with like $9. I mean, if you take his 3-bet stat, literally, ace is only going to have like 35% equity versus, I don't know, like a 6 or 7% range. So folding is fine, but I'd be a little suspicious after the hand that he played before that. But I think folding is okay. I didn't see what happened over here with the Jin JD. Did we 3-bet him with a king 8? Oh no, we squeezed the button. It's not a terrible spot since, obviously the button is going to fold a decent amount, but the thing about it is, you're not going to be taking it down pre-flop a ton with this other guy in the hand. He's shown before that he doesn't mind calling with some pretty crappy hands. Not that it's hugely disadvantaged to be calling out of position with crappy hands. But it's kind of a weird situation. Like you should definitely have like a very wide value range there. Whether king 8 is good enough or not to be in the bottom of that value range, I guess is a little bit hard to say. I don't hate it though. I mean, your play is supplemented with the dead money from the button that's going to fold a bunch, and sometimes you are just going to be able to, against that guy, against a guy that calls a jack 4 and then calls a bottom pair. It's not like your king 8 doesn't have any decent top pair value, so it couldn't be too bad. Okay, on the bottom we get min bet into on this board where we've got 9s, which is kind of interesting. Whoa. And we just call his min bet. Alright, I stopped the video because it's kind of a must raise there. Unless you already specifically know what a player's, he's kind of fishy, he min bets into us. You can't be real precise about his range. Obviously, there's nothing he calls with pre that he couldn't do that with. He could have an ace 10, he could have a jack. But the hands that people usually do that with, or I shouldn't say usually, the hands that he's most likely to take that line with are hands that, he's got a little bit of something that he doesn't want to fold. When you raise these hands, these little min bets as a bluff, you get snap called a ton by players with hands like small pairs, gut shots, ace high, just stuff where they have a little something and don't want to fold. So that's definitely a super easy value raise on the flop, because you're gonna get called there by stuff like 9, 10, 5, 6, whatever. I mean, you might not always get called, but he's definitely, it's definitely going to happen some of the time. And he's definitely going to have hands, you're going to be way ahead of the range that he calls with, let's put it that way. So you don't want to essentially give him a free card by calling his min bet there. It just misses a ton of value, and sometimes, fails to protect your hand too. Okay, so he min bets the turn again. The turn is a pretty decent card for us because it doesn't help any of his random weird stuff that he bets with on the flop. And plus it makes it, like if he has something like an 8-7 or whatever, we're more likely to get value than we were before. Not that I would have ever expected him to fold that in the first place, so that was a good card for us. And then he like half pot donks into us on the river, which is probably a call just because like his range is so random. Like he's trying to represent that he's hit something here, but how many ace-hex hands are taking this line flop and turn? How many backdoor flush draw combos does he have? How often is he taking that line with trips? It might happen some of the time, but there's so much like random spaz stuff that he could have that you should probably call there getting 3-1, especially when it's going to be like a pretty valuable note to have also versus this fish that we have position on. So I definitely think you can call there. And I'd also add, like, I'm not going to read a ton into some fishes. Like when he half pots on the end, I'm not going to say, oh, well, half pot, that's clearly value. That doesn't mean much of anything. I mean, it does sometimes when they make some big stupid fish that bet that's obviously like value or nothing. But most of the time, like, you really can't read a whole lot in a bet size there. So it's just, you should call it more often than when he bets 3/4, simply because you get better odds and his bet sizing isn't really all that telling. Okay, here with the 8-10 suited that we just folded on in the lower right hand corner, this 29-12 guy limps in. Now normally we wouldn't raise an 8-10 suited in middle position, but its expectation, its profitability goes way up when you consider your table layout. One, you've got a fish that limped in front of you, which raises the EV of like almost every hand. It raises the EV of suited hands actually more than offsuit hands, for whatever reason, probably because you get a little bit more multi-way pots than with an offsuit hand. But anyway, behind it you've got a 16-13 guy, a 14-12 guy, in the blinds you've got a 20-16 guy and a guy that's under a table that I can't see right now, but yeah, 14-10. So that's pretty much like a slam dunk profitable raise there versus this fishy guy in position with a pretty quality hand. Okay, we 3-bet this regular down on the bottom left with the King 4 suited. That's not so bad. I mean, you don't have a big sample on this 3-bet. He's folded to them 2 out of 3 times, so whatever. It's a bluff. You've probably a decent chance he folds to a bluff. Once he calls you and you get this board, hold on, I'm gonna pause for a second here. Like, I don't really care at this point what this fold to c-bet is, because this just is, okay, if we're raising him, we're assuming that he's a tight guy that we don't have a history with that's calling us pretty tight, right? So the kind of hands we would expect him to call with would be decent broadways maybe, which is ace queen, king queen, ace jack. 2 out of 3 of those have top pair here. We might expect him also to call us with mid pairs, 9s, 10s, jacks. Almost, all those hands that I mentioned except ace jack are calling on this board, and he's going to have top pair enough, and not that he has it an overwhelming amount of the time, but he's going to have it enough that it's not like the kind of board that we can just sit here and barrel on, because we're just going to be throwing away money into a value hand quite often. So this guy, with the range that we're assuming, the type of range we're assuming he has in order to 3-bet this in the first place, we should just check fold on this flop because it's like super good for his range, and you know, that's just all there's to it. He's just not going to fold a ton. And I don't like that bet size either. Like, I understand that maybe with a value hand you might bet a little bit more with some draws, but draws aren't really a huge part of his range anyway. Okay, weird spot alert. Let me stop this again. On table 2 there, you're on the button, and this 22-20 guy opens up in middle position, and he checks to you on a 9-5-4 board. And it's a weird spot because almost every 22-20 guy that plays at these stakes is betting this board like 100% of the time with 100% of the range. So you have to ask yourself what his range is here. There's a few different scenarios. Maybe he sees you as a really stubborn guy that doesn't fold to a lot of C-bets, or that your range is mostly pairs and he's just giving up because he thinks you're not going to fold a lot on this dry board. That's one scenario. A second scenario, you know, maybe he flopped a monster and just lost his mind and checked like a fish because LOL, I have a monster. Haha, check, whatever. That happens sometimes too. You know, in the first case, like, it's important to understand, I guess, that it's different. Okay, let's say that we had raised on the button and he called us in the big blind. He checks the flop and we have this ace queen of hearts. Well, normally we wouldn't always bet, but against most guys, and you know, against this guy with what we know about him, we would be betting there. It has a lot of benefits. Even though we have some showdown value, you know, there would be a little bit of value in betting. He could, in that case, he'd have a much looser range. He could call us with some worse ace highs. You know, we have some equity when called, but also, you know, if he has a worse hand, like, we prevent him from bluffing on the turn. You know, if he's sitting there with a queen jack and we check back the flop, you know, he might be able to force us off the hand. So in that scenario where we raise from the button and he calls in the blind, usually it's going to be more profitable to bet. In this scenario, it's different. Like, for one thing, his range is narrower in the first place. His range from opening middle position is mostly like pairs in decent broadways, you know, king, queen, king, jack, ace 10 plus, stuff like that. So our hand, ace queen, like, if it's a scenario where he's just check fold giving up, like, we dominate most of his give up range. Like, if he bets his pairs, those aren't the hands that he's giving up. His give up would be the broadways, which we're on top of all of that other than ace king. And like I say, if he checks with a pair, it would be to check call. Like, that's a third scenario that he could have sometimes. Like, he could have some marginal showdown value that he's planning on, just like us monkey bluffing, and he's going to check call. But I don't think we're in great shape against that range either. So I actually like checking back here, just because, for one, you know, I'm not expecting him to check fold a ton of the time. For two, I'm not expecting to be in great shape against his check calling range. And even in the scenario where he is check folding a lot, where he's just like check folding his king, queen, king, jack, whatever, like, we're already dominating those hands. So sometimes we're gonna like bink a cooler on the turn, but he can't really, you know, it's not like the before scenario where he can bet the turn and take us off the hand. I mean, he might be able to anyway, but he's not going to even try as much because then he doesn't represent anything. You know, like if he had queens or something, he's never checking the flop. So in this case, I just think, and I put a little bit of thought on this, I really just like checking there, and just try to get down to showdown in most cases. And it'd be nice to know what he does this with too, because it's very out of the ordinary. Okay, so we do check. We pick up a gut shot on the turn, which is okay, I guess. And by the way, we did get raised on that bottom table. We bet, which is kind of pointless, and he raises, which doesn't really rep anything, and we fold. Okay, that's kind of weird. Like, I don't like the bet there on the turn, because we're already kind of showdown bound. Like I say, you can't really, you know, we're only one street away from it then, plus we have showdown value and we have a few outs to gut shot, so I really, really hate the turn bet there. Like, way more than I would have hated a flop bet. Okay, so we raise on the button, ace-10 suited, get called by this 75-13 guy. Even though our equity isn't, you know, as huge as it would be on a lot of 10 high boards, that's an easy bet. The queen is terrible for us. There are a ton of hands like queen jack, king jack with spades, any queen of spades, any queen that had another big spade. I mean, like, his story makes sense there, even though he's a retard. Like, the queen just smashes his flop calling range, so that's a pretty easy fold with second pair. You know, even the times that you're ahead, you're still, he's still going to have some equity against you. Okay, not sure what's going on here. It looks like we got a phone call or something. Hopefully this isn't the remaining 30 minutes of the video. That would make for a poor viewing experience, I would think. Oh, there we go. All right. Here in the big blind with position on the 63-0 guy, yeah, it's super easy. Raise with a7. Oh, I'll bring those stats back up. I always forget that. There was a 3-4, like, you know, I isolate pretty wide, but with 2 regs behind you and a 4 high, like, I don't know. I'm just gonna fold there. Okay, you open 6-8 suited from the cutoff, which is fine. The guy behind you has been real tight, and both of the blinds are fairly tight. Even though it's short stacked, it's a very easy fold once he 3-bets you though. There with the king 3 suited, like, even though I wouldn't normally open that from the cutoff, with that line, the huge fish in front of you and regs behind you, like, I think you can definitely, like, that has enough value that you can profitably isolate there. You know, the only reason you wouldn't is if you think the guys behind you are like catching on to the fact that you're isolating a ton and they're just going to 3-bet the crap out of you. But otherwise, you can raise that in position versus a super fish, and it's going to make more money than if it had been folded to you, which would have just been a clear fold. And probably the same with this queen 8 suited in mid position. You know, it's only a little bit worse than what you would normally open with in mid position, which would be like, you know, queen 10 suited, something like that. You know, with these guys behind you, you're just not gonna, you know, the main reason you open tight in mid position usually is because you end up playing lots of pots out of position. But when you have these tight reg guys behind you, that's not going to happen. You're going to end up playing lots of pots in position versus a very bad player in a playable hand, so it's perfectly fine. And here, like, I don't like the 3-bet pre. This guy opens under the gun. He's tight. He folds to 3-bets 83% of the time. So ace-king isn't even going to be ahead of the range that he continues with there. You know, it'll probably still show some profit because, you know, you fold out a bunch of hands, smaller pairs, whatever. But I think it's going to be against this particular guy that's opening tight and folding all the stuff that that you want him to call with or raise with. It's probably just more profitable to call against him. And here on the bottom with the king queen, let me back this up a second. That was a little more than a second. You've got a reg that opens on the button, super fish that calls in the small blind, and a king queen. That's like the easiest squeeze in the history of squeeze. Because for one, you know, this guy doesn't have a huge fold to 3-bet yet, but it's only 134 hands. And we really don't care either way because king queen, you know, if he's the kind of guy that turns out to be stubborn and call a lot of 3-bets, king queen don't play that bad against him anyway. But you're definitely, like, the important thing is the 65 guy with a full stack that's just calling with all kinds of garbage. You have position on him, like, regardless of what button is going to do. Like, it's a super slam dunk fist pump 3-bet there. Here with the king 8 offsuit and the small blind, we've got an 18-16 guy behind us. So far, he has, folded the steal 75% of the time. You know, this isn't too bad of a hand anyway. It's not like it's exactly in any 2 cards type of hand. So I would definitely raise there. I think that's a, you know, missing a little bit of a plus EV easy steal. Same with the queen 8 suited. Like, we only have 19 hands on the guy and don't know a ton about him, but against most, like, tight regularish guys, that's going to be, I mean, they're probably folding enough that you could raise about anything, but like a queen 8 suited is definitely going to be way more than what you need to show profit there against someone that isn't just like auto defending fish. And with the king 7 offsuit, like if it folds to you, I would raise that, but with this extra limper guy in there, now I would fold it. Like when you have the two limpers, like all those real marginal offsuit kind of hands that you could profitably raise one limper with kind of go out the window. And also with a lot of your suited stuff that you would normally raise with, a lot of times, you know, like hands that aren't big pair, you know, top pair kind of hands that are decent multi-way, like small pairs, small connectors, things like that. Like they become better to overlimp than to raise in that spot, because you know, when you isolate, a lot of times, you know, you're going to end up heads up, and you know, you can see bets and flops when they fold. When there's already two guys that limp in there, that's just not going to happen very much. You're going to go multi-way a ton, which you know, makes weak offsuit hands play really bad. And all of the smaller stuff will play okay, but it's not going to like enjoy the benefit of being able to get people full. So usually you just make more money by overlimping than you would by raising. Here with the ace queen suited, this guy only folds to 20% of 3-bet so far, if I'm reading that right. So you should definitely like widen your value range against that guy. You know, 80% of whatever his middle position raise is going to be behind ace queen suited. Like your hand kind of owns him if he's calling that many 3-bets. And the king 10 suited under the gun, lower left, again, you've got 67-0 guy in the big blind, you've got regulars behind you, so you should really open wider there than you would normally. And king 10 suited was just like barely outside of a normal under the gun range. Like normally you'd raise like king jack suited, you know, that's the bottom of most people's ranges there. So you should definitely be adding in some hands with that guy in the big blind. And tighter guys behind you that are going to fold a ton. Oops. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here in a second, because I've actually got enough, you know, I could probably make a second video out of what's left here after I get through everybody's. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. You know, I'd say the main theme of this video is, you know, and I noticed you playing a lot of tables too, which, you know, whatever, there are pros and cons to that. But the biggest problem I see in this is, like the biggest thing to work on would be table awareness, because there are a lot of situations where you should be adjusting your pre-flop ranges based on the arrangement of the players at the table, and that you know, you missed a lot of spots where you could profitably raise as a steal, where you could profitably you know, isolate a fish, and it's especially important on these kind of tables. Like the way games are today, like look around, like, you know, most of these players aren't terrible. Like there's a ton of guys with red stats and then a fish here and there. So you really need to get good at, you know, paying attention to those sort of things, because you want to get that fish's money before these other guys do. Okay, that's it for this video. Hope that you liked it. If you'd like to have your own poker video reviewed for free, check out the upload tab on my Facebook fan page. If you're interested in personal coaching or have suggestions for future content for the site, email me at opensourcepoker@gmail.com.